Here we go, episode 139 of The Hardline. Yes, a new era for us and the Hardline Sports Talk podcast. No longer the Hardline Sports Talk, just the Hardline. JM, before we get to our big announcement, big new logo change, and big new style change of the podcast, let's ask you how you're doing.
I'm doing great, Mike. A new era. It's exciting times. This is just like the most exciting time between this and football being right around the corner and everything going on right now. Super exciting times. Excited for this change. And yeah, dude, I'm ready to rock.
So the Hardline, that is our new name, just the Hardline, and we are exclusively a football podcast. We're very excited about this change. We have a new logo, which will be out on social media. As you watch this, it'll be out now, tomorrow for us. But JM, we're super excited about this change. We thought long and hard about this change, and we finally come to this decision, and it's an exciting one.
Yeah, I think we both agreed that we thrive when it comes to the sport of football, and as much as we love baseball and basketball and those other sports, I think it really stops there. But as much as we love those other sports, I think we realize it's best if we solely focus in on football, and to specify it is a permanent change. Things are going to be the same as they were last year in terms of we're going to be given content of the gambling show. We're going to be having the regular podcast. That'll be coming out every Tuesday morning during the NFL season, right after, the morning after the Monday night game concludes. And then the gambling show, I think we agreed, would be Friday. So, we'll have more content on top of that. Just really, really excited.
Lots of great stuff on social media as well, on YouTube exclusively. Some of that stuff will be, and then of course on Instagram and TikTok and all that good stuff. We are really excited, and like you mentioned, the football season is here. There's so much that we are able to do now as a podcast. There's going to be things we want to involve, the people that listen to this show. We want more fan engagement, videos sent, questions sent, and we're going to put all that out on social media where you guys can send those stuff if you want to be a part of the podcast. Super excited about that. But Jim, there's a lot going on as we get set here for the NFL season. A lot of wide receivers still holding out. I just saw before we clicked play here that Jamar Chase is kind of beefing with his coach right now. So there's a lot going on in the NFL world as we get set for, what are we, a week away tomorrow from the start of the NFL season.
Yes, it's coming very, very fast. This whole receiver holdout, Hassan Reddick with the holdout, is Dak still, that situation, it sort of seems like at this point is going to spill into the season and maybe just not happen at all. And Dak's going to enter, free agency last year. I don't think the Cowboys have they do have a franchise tag left, but I don't think it would be very worth it to their payroll situation. So interesting times. Oh, I didn't even mention Trent Williams.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a shame. If Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk do not play week 1 against my beloved New York Jets, that'd really be a shame.
I really like the Jets right now in that game. I like it.
So,
you know what's funny? A month ago, maybe even 2 months ago, I would have told you the 49ers are going to kill them. Look at that spread. It was like 5. I'm like, oh, there's a reason why that's 5. Mm-hmm. I like the Jets in this game.
Yeah, I honestly think a big reason for that, I was thinking like, oh, maybe the public's just really on the Jets. That's why the line's closing. But I think that could be a reason. But also, Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. It's Trent Williams, really.
Trent Williams is moving that line.
Is the reason why that line is closing.
And the way it's moved the past couple of days, and you have to expect he's not going to play.
Like, no disrespect to Ayuk, great player, but Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the NFL. And when you look at that 49ers offensive line, like, it really is like Trent Williams and that's it. Like, they don't have scrubs exactly. They have some solid players on that line, but, nobody's within the stratosphere of Trent Williams.
In June, PFF did a rating. It's actually really funny that I just clicked onto the rankings of the NFL, and they were 18th last year. Yeah. So that just tells you how important he is to this offensive line. They're probably in the high 20s if he's not playing here. Maybe even worse.
He's basically a weapon. We've seen they're pulling him all the time. They even line him up in some weird formations sometimes. Like, Trent Williams is a weapon for them.
He's a dangerous player. Not somebody you'd want to have to run in front of.
Why not just put Trent Williams in on goal line, running back?
They could do that.
Why not just do a fullback dive to Trent Williams?
It's a possibility.
He could.
You know what you should do?
Pancakes linemen all the time. I'm sure he could do it with just his shoulders.
When you're there in San Francisco, walk down to the sideline a little bit and say, "Hey, Kyle, I got this
Yeah.
really good idea
Yeah.
for you. You know, if this guy ever wants to come back and play,
Yeah.
run him at the goal line.
I'm going to bring a resume with me, too, because I'm sure he's going to ask for it as soon as I tell him.
You
that.
think so?
Oh,
he's going to be that
100%.
impressed?
Yeah. He's going to be like, oh, my God. Like, what are you, coming from the Andy Reid tree? Are you like a long-lost cause? And I'm
What
like,
tree is he from? Is he from? He's from his dad's
he's from
tree.
his dad's tree, yeah.
That was a bad question.
Yeah.
That was a bad question.
Yeah.
Anyway, lots of different segments we're going to be able to bring out as well with the change to an all football podcast. We're going to debut a couple of those today. And right now, though, we're going to talk about this poll that I saw from ESPN. It came out, I think, this morning. And they asked 103 anonymous NFL players, simple questions. And we're not going to go over all the questions, but there were a couple of questions in particular that I was very interested by. And the first one was most overrated quarterback in the league. And Josh Allen got the most votes for most overrated quarterback in the league. He did get votes also for best quarterback in the league. Not in the top 3, but he was the 4th. But he was rated the most overrated quarterback in the league. And I have to ask the question, like, how is this guy so disrespected? I don't understand.
Well, I think we got to remember the players are saying these things, so they don't exactly view the game the way we do and fans do and analysts do. Like they look at it differently. I think when you're a player and you're saying, all right, who's the most overrated quarterback in the league? They're probably thinking, Josh Allen. He's lost to Mahomes a bunch of times in his career. He's never won an MVP. He's never won a Rookie of the Year. He's never been to a Super Bowl. Like, none of the accolades really, get checked off for Josh Allen. So if I had to take a guess, that's probably why.
It just doesn't, like, you watch this guy play, and specifically last season, he got off to a rough start, a lot of turnovers early in the season, but you watch this guy play, especially early, and you're like, oh, this guy's the entire offense. He's too much of the offense to the point where it was actually a detriment to the entire team. And you saw later in the year them focus more on the run game without him, and they got James Cook involved more. And we know the issues with the wide receivers, but he was too much of the offense. He was carrying his team in a way that was just not sustainable. Like, do they not see that?
Well, I was going to say, I don't understand how you could be a defensive player in the NFL and say that Josh Allen is the most overrated quarterback, because I would imagine that week, that game plan, when you're planning to play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, it's probably a pain in the ass. Because, number one, you really can't throw a scout team quarterback out there that could kind of represent what Josh Allen does on the field. Oh, yeah, but do we have a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback around that could run you over and also throw the ball 80 yards down the field?
Great guess.
Was I on the money?
6'5", 237.
Wow, that's pretty good. So game planning against this guy must be a nightmare. Playing against him is a nightmare. He just does so much on the football field. You just touched on it, how he, accounts for so much of his team's offensive output. The thing that gets me with Allen and the double standard that's in the NFL is, like I just said before, that he doesn't have the accolades, the winning, and everything. And Josh Allen has made the playoffs just about every year of his career. Mm-hmm. The guy has won football games. He just hasn't made it to the big game or won the big game. He's got to go against Patrick Mahomes, and we know about the defensive issues they've had against the Chiefs and the 13-second situation. We got to get into all that. I want to bring up Matt Stafford, because what is the big knock that we give Josh Allen?
Doesn't win.
No, the other one.
Oh, the turnovers.
The turnovers, yes. Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl throwing 17 interceptions, which led the NFL that year. And he just gets a free pass because he won the Super Bowl, and everybody loves Matt Stafford, and, oh, he's underrated, oh, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and blah, 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 blah. Winning a Super Bowl takes care of everything else. So that is the unfortunate situation of Josh Allen when it comes to this list.
Maybe if Josh Allen not loses, but just comes up short every single season with Buffalo, and maybe it's the organization, maybe it's just a bad luck organization, and he leaves for, I don't know, maybe the Chargers, and then he goes and wins the Super Bowl. They're obviously the most hypothetical situation.
Right.
Maybe we'll feel more sympathy for Josh Allen, and he'll get the correct recognition, because like you mentioned, and I think you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when discussing Matt Stafford, he's kind of getting a little overrated the past year or so, really, this offseason.
From under to overrated.
And I love him. He's great.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's fascinating.
I don't think it's fair to Allen, because when we think of Stafford, like, everybody loves to talk about Sean McVay and what a smart offensive mind he is, and some of the how Stafford, like, nobody really thinks Stafford needs to do it all on his own. Josh Allen, unfortunately, especially last year in the second half of the season, had to do it all on his own. And when you're forced to do that, you could get a little reckless at times. And how can one individual handle that? And I think he handles it just about as well as you can, considering they were 6-6 last year, and they win 5 games in a row and end up winning that division. It was really a remarkable story, one of the bigger storylines of the season last year. And I can't believe I'm defending Josh Allen and the Bills this hard as a Jets fan. But it's not fair to him to say, oh, he's a reckless player, this and that, when they ask him to do so much, and he does it, and he wins.
Now, the other side of this was that these players, these 103 anonymous players, were asked to rank the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, okay? And the guys that got the most votes, obviously number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2 was Lamar Jackson. Number 3 was Joe Burrow. Number 4 was Josh Allen. Number 5 was your boy Aaron Rodgers. But those are the other top vote getters. The top 3 were the top 3.
Yeah.
And, like, again, Burrow, I could have the conversation. I could see the conversation. I can't really see the conversation with Lamar Jackson anymore. I really can't. Well, especially after the last season.
I was going to say the opposite. Like, when Burrow was at his peak and staying healthy and the Bengals were playing well and they made it to the Super Bowl that year, like, I remember getting into multiple arguments saying I would rather have Joe Burrow than Josh Allen.
I remember
And if Joe Burrow is fully healthy this year, I'm sure I will still stand by that statement. When Joe Burrow is healthy and playing well, there are not many quarterbacks in the league I would rather have than Joe Burrow. But to put him above Josh Allen when he hasn't been able to stay on the field, and even when he was on the field in the beginning of the year last year, was not very good. To be saying all those things when the Bills have had more recent success and Allen has been more consistent, it's just narratives that come along with, I think there's really a bias when it comes to where you come from, how the media treats you, all that stuff. Josh Allen, if he went to Michigan instead of Wyoming and had as big of a college career as Joe Burrow did, I think he gets treated differently.
You know what? I don't want to make excuses for Allen, but like his playoff losses aren't like regular playoff losses. I mean, look at these games that they're losing to the Chiefs.
Didn't he throw like 8 or 9 touchdowns in 2 games against Kansas City?
Like he has that game
and
against
lost both of them.
Right. The what was it, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
That game
the divisional game.
Right. The divisional game, which basically should have been the AFC. Didn't the Chiefs lose that year?
The Chiefs lost to Cincinnati.
That could have been the AFC Championship game, though. That was the best game of the postseason, one of the best games we've ever watched. Josh Allen played unbelievable in that game. It was Gabe Davis's breakout. Like, we're talking about shootouts where the defense is costing them games, not Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Josh Allen didn't decide to go for it with DeMar Hamlin on a fake punt.
Yep.
I mean, that's on McDermott, and the player's not executing. Would they lose 27-24 last season?
Yep.
Yeah, you got to win that game. It's at home, but they did their job.
Right.
It's just interesting. You think Josh Allen's losing these games, and they scored 10, 14 points in a game.
No. I really do want to dive into this point of that where you come from and where you're drafted and all that stuff. You get treated differently because ESPN came out with a ranking today, and it was, first of all, it was a bit of a cop-out list because it was the top 100 players in the NFL projecting into the 2024 season. So basically saying where they're going to be ranked at the end of the year, which to me is a bit of a cop-out because it gives you a little bit of a safety net to say, well, I'm not saying he's this good right now. I'm just saying at the end of the year he's going to be that good. But anyways, they had C.J. Stroud at number 15 on this list, above players. The next 3 guys on the list were Nick Bosa, Sauce Gardner, and Fred Warner. Like, crazy high. Those are all 3 guys who are first-team All-Pros and at least top 3. Some of them are number 1 at their own positions. Then they put Jordan Love at number 56. To me, like, that just makes absolutely zero sense. I don't care if Jordan Love had 3 years to sit on the bench. Those are both guys who played their first year as a starter in the NFL and had extremely similar years. I would make the argument that Jordan Love was better last year, and that's considering he had a worse supporting cast on the offensive side of the ball. Now, you could tell me the coaching and the offensive line and the defense and whatever else for C.J. Stroud, and those are valid points. I get it. I'm just saying, Jordan Love, because of him not being a big name out of college, him not going to Ohio State, the way that, the attention has been, the Packers don't have any huge name guys on the offensive side of the ball. They're a really young team. All that stuff, I actually think it hurts him when it comes to the media.
I'm like, I know Jordan Love's stats off the top of my head, like to finish the year, the last 11 games, it was 23 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yeah.
And like I almost forgot what like they looked in total, because he really did, like, we remember he did not look like a starting quarterback for the first half of the season.
That Raiders game was like the peak of like,
we were done.
Yeah.
Done, out. Because I think you and I were like a little more optimistic on him than a lot of people were.
We were, because he came out of the gate playing very well that game against Chicago. And then he hit that snag in the middle of the season.
They screwed me, man, in a game against the Saints. The games you remember that you lose, man, gambling, it's so funny. It's like week 2 or 3. They screwed me, man.
Oh, that was a really bad game. That was awful.
It was an awful game.
Yeah.
Carlson missed a field goal or something, or an extra point, and they ended up having to go for it twice, and they ended up winning the game because of it. I don't want to talk about it. Bad stuff. But one more from this poll here, which I found fascinating. So they asked these players which rookie quarterback will have the most successful career. And, I think it's easy to say Caleb Williams, right? And you look at the situation he's in. No rookie quarterback has gone into a better situation than Caleb Williams this season.
No, definitely not.
But Daniels is going into a pretty damn good situation too. And I think these players, like, they see the talent. They understand the talent that Daniels has.
I'd pump the brakes.
What?
I like Jaden Daniels to have a good rookie season because I like Kingsbury, and Terry McLaurin is definitely I don't view him as a top 10 receiver in the league, but he's a solid number 1 receiver.
Right.
I don't like the take that he's going into a really good situation though, or even a good situation. I would say his situation is like average.
I think it's an above average situation. I don't think it's a bad situation.
They really don't have much weapons outside of McLaurin.
I don't think it's a bad situation.
It's not. I don't think it's bad. I think number 1, you're going to Washington already sets you back because
Caleb going to Chicago sets him back.
Yeah.
And they said that.
Yeah.
The players actually said that. Like, when's the last time Chicago's ever, they
never
had a franchise
had a 4,000
quarterback.
yards passer. I don't.
There are some people in Chicago that are saying he's already the greatest quarterback to ever, like, start.
I think that's disrespectful to Jay Cutler, to be
Caleb.
honest with you. Jay Cutler in his prime was a pretty good quarterback. He wasn't a guy that, we're talking about in the top 5 scenarios, but he was a good quarterback.
Caleb Williams got 34 votes here. Daniels got 30. Very close. And the number 3 on this list was J.J. McCarthy. And then the other top vote getters, Michael Penix and Bo Nix.
Wow. Okay. So no Drake May.
No Drake May.
Again, I think these are players saying this, correct?
These are players.
Okay. I'm going to try to look at this from a player perspective. I think, players think about situations in the league. The Patriots situation is not very attractive. I think that, the Bill Belichick not being there, obviously players have a ton of respect for Belichick and what he built and how he developed Brady and all of that. I think that's most likely, I'm going to guess, why they would not put May, because they don't trust Mayo and that roster.
By the way, did you see Mayo the other day? Just I think he's throwing up all over himself, basically.
I'm going to be you right now, like over dramatic about coaching. I think he's going to be like a disaster.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a disaster too. And one of the reasons why is because after the preseason game, which May played very well, the last one against the Commanders on Sunday night, he had said Jacoby's like our guy, or something like that. Or
Yeah.
like Drake May's been
May's
the second
best quarterback.
He's
on
the
our
second best quarterback.
Yeah.
And then literally at 9 o'clock, he goes on a Boston radio station and says, May outplayed everybody.
Yeah.
Like not even 12 hours later.
Yeah.
He's already contradicting himself. And Brissett might not be ready to play now because he got hurt in that game.
Right.
I was listening to a couple people today. They said that they know May is better, obviously, and they actually admitted it, but they might not want to put him out there behind such an awful roster so early. And honest to God, good for them.
I think they're going to be like the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that.
I really do think they're going to be the worst team in the NFL. They play in a division that has 3 teams that can make the playoffs.
They're going to go 0-6,
They're
maybe
going
1-5.
They should. God bless whatever team they beat in that division. It's not good, bro. You look at the receiving room. Like they were in on Ayuk. Ayuk obviously was like, I don't want to come here. Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk. They spent a 3rd round pick on that kid in the draft this year. It might turn out to be a pretty good receiver. He was Penix's number 2 at Washington.
They might have one of the worst offensive lines, if not the worst offensive line in football.
It's just a lot of like guys who are borderline starters. That Cole Strange pick didn't exactly work out for them a couple of years ago. He's been a serviceable lineman. He hasn't been a complete bust. Hasn't been worth a 1st round pick, but there's no weapons on this team.
It's going to be
bad.
The
The offensive line is not good. And the coaching staff, the defense is declining. Judon's gone.
We're going to do bold predictions later. This is not one of them, but it's a very bold prediction. I think 2 teams are going to compete. Well, more than 2 probably will compete for the number 1 pick in the draft next year. I think 2 in the AFC. The Raiders and them. I think the Raiders are going to be that bad.
I think I'm a little higher on the Raiders than you are.
Yeah.
I see some people saying that they could be a sneaky playoff team. I don't know.
I saw that the other day.
That is not happening. I do think the Antonio Pierce magic pixie dust is going to fizzle out, but I don't think that they are going to be that bad. Their roster is pretty solid. The only way I see them being really bad is if the quarterback play is terrible and if this guy Pierce just turns out to be like a motivational speaker and doesn't know how to run a football team.
He might just be a varsity football coach.
Yeah.
I'm going to run the hell out of you and scream at you.
Exactly.
But it might motivate you a little bit. Right. But a fascinating list here as we talk quarterback play early on.
There's so many good quarterbacks in the NFL, it's actually absurd.
Yeah, it's interesting though because there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but what's the dividing line between okay, these are guys that can carry you, and then these are just your Kirk Cousins, Tua's, Dak's, really good but need a little bit more. And then where's your now you're at league average.
Well, I think you have guys that are also in between because of injuries or situations or whatever. Like, for example, I think a guy like a Kyler Murray that's playing at the peak of his game, he could throw his hat in the ring of carry you. I mean, he's one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league. At his peak, he was an MVP candidate. He was a number 1 overall pick. I can't
wait to watch them this year.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch them.
I think that every game for them, it seems like it's going to be 42-38.
Yep.
That defense is brutal.
That was going to be one of my bold predictions, actually.
Cardinals playoffs?
No, they'll surprise you early, score a crap ton of points, and next year we'll be talking about them as the team ready to take off.
Right.
But I kept it out. I don't think it's that bold.
Okay.
Well, speaking of bold predictions, we are going to be doing a lot of this throughout the season, and these are going to be bold predictions because we're a week away from the NFL season starting. These are going to be bold takes, hot takes, which we will do every week we record. But this week, it's bold predictions because we have to predict a little bit. So, JM, I have one, and I can't wait for your reaction. Should I start with...
I'm very scared.
I think you should be scared.
All right, start off cold and start off warm and get hotter and hotter as you go on.
All right, so I'll start warm. Okay. Warm is the Dallas Cowboys missed the playoffs, and next season they will be looking for a new quarterback when Dak leaves, and they realize their financial situation is not sustainable, and they're looking for a rookie quarterback.
Okay. We're starting off pretty hot.
It's hot.
I mean, I think we can all agree Dallas's offseason has been a head scratcher and has been really, really weird, and one that we haven't seen out of a team. Like the last offseason I could think about was the Colts when they were coming off of that year when they made the playoffs with Phillip Rivers, and everybody kind of started getting excited for the Colts, and they had a bunch of cap space going in the offseason. And then like they didn't really spend, and they just got like Matt Ryan, and it was, or I'm sorry, or was it? No, it was Matt Ryan. Yeah. They got Matt Ryan. No, it was Carson Wentz. It was Wentz
before
yes.
Ryan.
They got Carson Wentz, and like that was it. And it was like they have all this cap space. They didn't really spend money. That was the last time I could think about a team that like we had all these expectations for them to do something in the offseason. They just didn't really do anything. But the Cowboys are like different. This team has won 13 games or 12 games, what? The last 3 seasons, something like that.
They just didn't do enough.
They haven't done anything. They let Tony Pollard walk out the door, which is okay. I guess you're not going to pay running backs in the financial situation you're in. That's fine, but they didn't draft one. They got a running back room right now. They've just made the grand decision to bring in Dalvin Cook to pair that dinosaur with another one in Ezekiel Elliott, and you got Rico Dowdle back there. Michael Gallup leaves. They don't really get another receiver. They just
Brandon Cooks is still there, correct?
Brandon Cooks is still there. Yep.
Like, you're going to run out there with Brandon Cooks and obviously CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right. And Dak is good enough to make this work, but to take them to the next level, they needed more weapons. The offensive line we know is going to be good, and they drafted the kid out of Oklahoma. I'm forgetting his name. Starts with a
Tyler
G.
Guyton.
Yep. Look at that big brain. Starts with a G.
That's nice.
And so we know their offensive line's going to be good. And, like, yeah, the defense was pretty solid. It was good last year. Obviously, you have Micah Parsons. You have Diggs. And Bland's going to miss time now. Yep. He's out for an extended period of time to start the year. Mm-hmm. But, like, again, there was just so much more to be done to improve this team.
Tyron Smith left. Van Der Esch retired. They lost a couple.
It's a winnable.
Gilmore's gone.
It's a winnable division. You won it last season. You could have won it again.
Yep.
And they didn't do enough. So there we go. And Dak leaves at the end of the year.
Gone for 2 years.
What? Oh, you said Gilmore?
I said Gilmore's gone, but I was like, he's been gone for 2 years. Yeah. Anyways, my first bold prediction. I guess I'll start. I don't even know what my warmest one is. Let me just gloss over it real quick.
Yeah.
I would say 3 teams make the playoffs in the NFC North. That is my first warmer prediction.
NFC North.
NFC North. The Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, and the Chicago Bears, to be specific. 3 of them make the playoffs. I think this division is going to be really good, really competitive. I'm not going to say who I think is going to win it until we talk about it next week. Yeah. But listen, I like... The Bears' defense was night and day from the first half of the year to the second half last year. You're hoping you get the second half Bears defense, and I honestly don't see why the defense wouldn't be at least good again. I mean, they got Montez Sweat at the trade deadline last year. Jalen Johnson has ascended into being one of the best corners in the NFL now. And I just really like Caleb Williams as a quarterback prospect, and obviously that's not a bold take to say. And, we're going to talk about the Packers. We both really like Jordan Love. We really like this team. We like LaFleur as a coach. And, the Lions speak for themselves. This team went to the NFC Championship game last year. Didn't really lose much. So that's my first. I really do believe that. I do really think that 3 teams are going to make the playoffs out of the NFC North.
I didn't want to spoil anything. I came to the conclusion, I think yesterday, that I was going to have the Bears make the playoffs, but I'm with you there. Okay. A 9-8 team getting in.
And I didn't even talk about the rest of the NFC.
No, right.
The rest of the NFC, like you just said, Cowboys might miss the playoffs.
Right.
The NFC South, I mean, I think the Buccaneers are actually getting a little underrated.
Oh, no.
It's like people are really burying them. You got to give them credit of the year they had last year, but I'm not going to pick them to make the playoffs. And then, now you're left with one more wild card spot for the NFC West, and I'll give that to the Rams or the Seahawks, and that'll be it.
All right, so my next bold prediction.
Although I do think Dallas is going to make the playoffs. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
The Steelers lose their streak, and they lose it in a bad way. Mm-hmm. I think this Steelers team has a chance to be like, oh, my God, they were that bad. Yeah. Like, I think 6-7 wins is on the table for this team. Yeah. And a couple of, again, I get how good the defense is. It's absolutely loaded. I don't think you're going to get certain seasons from specific players that you think you're going to get, but still a really solid defense. It'll be a top 10 defense. Could be better. But the problem's offensively. Like, they have Pickens, and then really what else on the outside? Van Jefferson's there. Like, what do you have on the outside there? The offensive line's not good. And I didn't even bring up what could be the messiest quarterback room in the entire league by far, which is Russell Wilson, who only has a relationship with the coach and Mike Tomlin, and Justin Fields, who's trying to save his career and get another job next year.
Right.
This could be a huge mess. The noise and the drama could cause even more problems, which is why I think after this season, and it might not be deserved, but it could get so bad and messy in Pittsburgh that some people will be calling for Mike Tomlin's job.
Wow. It's happened before in recent history. It has happened before where his job has been questioned.
But it hasn't been justified. I think it can get so bad here with Wilson and Fields and just kind of the overall situation where it might be justified.
We've talked about that on this show in the past of Tomlin, yeah, sure, look, pat on the back. They haven't had a losing season, but they've kind of been stuck in this in-between, slightly above average era for a while.
And can I ask you a genuine question? If they look like they did in the preseason, right, which is just brutal on, just unwatchable on offense and obviously really good on defense. Tomlin doesn't coach the offense, but isn't it now kind of Tomlin's fault that they can't figure out the offense? And then don't you want to change?
The craziest thing is Steelers fans, I don't think there was a more hated man in America than Matt Canada last year in the 2023 season. Steelers fans were calling for this guy's head, and now they do the great decision to bring in Arthur Smith, who was maybe the other most hated man in America by Falcons fans and Bijan Robinson fantasy owners last year. They bring in Arthur Smith to be their offensive coordinator, imagining, Arthur Smith is a guy who is obsessed with running the football, so expect the Steelers to run the crap out of the ball this year. And I think that might cater to also Justin Fields if Russell Wilson gets off to a shaky start. Let's run the ball even more. Let's bring in a running quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, a couple injuries to this team. This offense is going to be terrible. Things could go south quick. Don't hate that take. I mean, it's very competitive. I mean, 3 of those teams, I think, maybe not the Browns, but I was going to say 3 of those teams I think you could predict to go to the Super Bowl, and nobody would, look at you like you were crazy.
3 playoff teams. I mean,
3
definitely,
playoff teams.
3 teams can absolutely make the playoffs. I'm not saying that's what I have is 3 teams in that division, but yeah, and I've seen people the last couple of days giving them love, this is going to be a 9-10 win team. I can't see it for the life of me. No, I can't.
And they somehow find a way every year. Not this year.
Not this year.
Not this year.
Dead. Done.
All right, my second hottest take. Derek Carr loses the starting job in the middle of the season this year. My expectations for this Saints team are bad. Spoiler alert, think they're going to finish last in their division. I do not like them at all. I do not like Marcus Allen. I do not like Derek Carr. I don't like Alvin Kamara at the age that he is. It's a super inefficient offense. Derek Carr, this offensive line that the Saints has is actually good. And Derek Carr was one of the least pressured quarterbacks in the NFL last year, yet he was second in check down rate. The guy just refuses to, and he was the same way in Oakland. He just refuses to throw the ball down the field. And I think they're going to be like, dude, you're holding this offense back. And at a certain point, he's going to have to push the ball down the field, and he's going to turn the ball over. Things are going to get sloppy. And then the New Orleans Saints are going to say, let's see what we got in Spencer Rattler. Even freaking Taysom Hill might get more snaps at quarterback than he does already. I don't think that things are going to go well for the Saints team, and I think Derek Carr is going to be out of there after this season.
Yeah, I think Allen gets fired first. I don't think that's a particularly hot take. I'm with you there. They're just kind of again, another team kind of just stuck. It's what's going on with that organization. They've given him time here to kind of fix this thing since Peyton left, and they just haven't done anything. And you know what you're getting with Derek Carr. It's not very good, but it's just they're stuck, and there's nothing they can do about it. So I'm with you. They're going to be really bad this year. All right, my final and hottest take. I'm very excited for you to hear this one.
I'm so scared.
The Atlanta Falcons will win 12-plus games, and if not be the 1 seed, absolutely be the 2 seed. They improved their defense over the last 2 weeks immensely. Judon can still play. Terrell's a top corner in the league. Their interior defensive line play, very good. They have a good offensive line, good run offensive line as well. Bijan, I mean, it's not a hot take. I think he's going to absolutely explode in this offense. And, like, the level of upgrade between Kirk Cousins and the quarterback play they had last season, you can't even, like, describe the gap. And then the gap between Arthur Smith and Zach Robinson, the guy calling the plays now from the Rams for the Falcons, and Raheem Morris as a head coach, is, again, can't explain the gap. This team explodes.
All right. Before I dive into this, I just want to preface this and say I really hope that next week when we do the prediction show, if you are standing by this Falcons take, you got to be in on the Jets too. Because I don't see how you could say all these things about the Falcons and not, like, literally say a quarterback coming off the torn Achilles, all this young talent around him, the on paper, the Jets defense is better than the Falcons, but the Falcons could be really good also with all the additions they made. That's all I'll say about that. I like the Falcons. Like, I'm going to pick them to win the division. I think that is a little crazy.
It's a light schedule. It's a really bad division.
I really like the coaching staff. I think that McVay comes from a very good tree, and I think that coming from the McVay tree is gonna, Zach Taylor came from the McVay tree, and for some reason the jury's still out on Zach Taylor for some people. I mean, the guy's gone to a Super Bowl and done a pretty good job. Yeah, I don't get it, but I don't hate the coaching staff at all. I like the coaching staff. It's a little rich for me, though. Like, I know the division is weak, and I actually was listening to the Rich Eisen show today, and they were going over the Falcons' schedule. Falcons' schedule is pretty light.
It's a light schedule?
It actually is pretty light.
Listen, if we're going to rank the
beginning
teams,
is not. The beginning, they play Kansas City and Philly in the first 3 weeks.
Yes, which, again, they're going to start off 1 and 2. Most likely 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And that Philly game might be for the 1 seed early, depending on, they can have the same record. But either way, I like it. But they can, like, we can rank the teams when they get to the playoffs, and, like, they can be the 1 seed, but I'm like, oh, I like Philly better, and I like Detroit better, and I like Green Bay better. But based on the schedule and based on the division, that's how I see the Falcons.
So a major issue for them this offseason, though, was their pass rush. And they did get Judon. They passed up on, we were mocking Dallas Turner to them a lot in the draft. Obviously, we know about the Penix pick, bit of a head scratcher. We don't doubt Penix as the talent, but obviously just in terms of situation and all that stuff, didn't really make too much sense. But they did get Judon. Judon's 32 years old?
Yep.
He tore his bicep last year, played 4 games
played
or something?
4 games.
4 games. So you're relying on Matthew Judon to come back at his age. Listen, he's not coming off an ACL or anything lower body or something like that. And they were talking about this on Hard Knocks. Poles was talking about it on Hard Knocks, saying, he's coming off a torn bicep. That's not a huge deal for an edge rusher. But the age is a concern, and we'll see.
I got to watch that. I still have to watch that.
Stuff.
It was interesting, when they were talking about Judon.
I haven't watched the finale, but yeah, when they were talking about Judon, at one point the Bears executives were like, "Yeah, like we're gonna get him." Like they were talking to Eberflus, they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get Judon."
Oh, I really gotta watch. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
but
they gave New England the same price that Atlanta gave. They gave the 3rd round pick.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go back the last 2 years though. Before he got hurt, 2021, 12.5 sacks in 16 games, and 2022 in 15 games, 15.5 sacks. Unbelievable year in 22. Obviously, last year you mentioned he had the injury, 2 picks, and 4 sacks in those 4 games. Good player, still productive. We'll see what he does.
Yeah. All right.
Let's hear it.
I actually think this is a hotter take than what you just said.
Wow.
I really do. In the opposite direction. It's a negative take.
Ooh.
The Houston Texans are going to miss the 2024 playoffs. That is my super, super hot take going into the season. Listen, originally I had this written down as the Texans just aren't going to win the division, because I also think it's a little stupid that people are just penning them in as the winner of this division. I think the Colts are going to be a problem, and I think people are sleeping on the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are going to have an improved season this year. Listen, the Texans really were like the most, if not one of the most exciting stories in football last year, right?
Sure.
CJ Stroud emerged, had one of the better rookie seasons we've seen out of a quarterback in recent history. You could argue ever. Make the playoffs. They win a playoff game against the Browns, right? Then they go to Baltimore, they lose. And then the offseason comes, and they're out here. They're signing Joe Mixon. They're trading for Stephon Diggs. They lose Jonathan Greenard and say, you know what, no problem. We're going to get Danielle Hunter. Like, they're making moves and adding to this football team. The NFL is not a year-to-year league. I think something needs to be said about being the Houston Texans and having the schedule they had and playing every single one of your games at 1 o'clock on Sunday. This team's going to be put on the map now. They're going to have a tougher schedule because of, you know, where they finished at first in the division last year. They're playing a lot of primetime games, right? I think a possibility, like this time last year, if I sat here and looked at this camera and said, I think Trevor Lawrence, the hype is fake and he's going to have a bad season, like I would have been called crazy because the hype train for Trevor Lawrence coming off the season he had, the Jags made the playoffs, young quarterback, right? And a hyped up quarterback coming out of college. It was like, yep, this is the year Trevor Lawrence, the Jags, you know, people were even saying they could go to the freaking Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence kind of craps the bed last year. Who's to say the same thing isn't going to happen to CJ Stroud? So I think for us to just assume and write off this team as being this great team and they're the biggest threat to Kansas City, which I do not believe at all. Yeah, that's my bold prediction.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm a little scared our predictions are going to look very similar come next week when we have the prediction show. But yeah, it is fascinating. I'm starting to buy in a little bit more on the Jags. I've been really reading up on them the past couple of days. So
defense should be pretty good.
They are very interesting. The Texans, I love the point you made about not playing at 1 o'clock. You're playing a first place schedule, playing at night, you know, playing at different times, you know, and listen, there's travel issues with everybody, but you're going to be playing short weeks. So you're going to be playing at night, like you mentioned, and, you know, the travel is just going to be worse instead of playing at 1 o'clock. So nobody ever mentions that. It's a great point. And how about just like a sophomore slump? No?
Yeah, exactly.
Like a sophomore slump is possible.
Yeah, your tape's on film in the NFL for a year now. And I think we could say this, the same thing might happen to Jordan Love. I don't know. I mean, I think Jordan Love's a little bit more seasoned because he got to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a while. And I also think we trust the Packers system more than we trust the Texans, although D'Amico Ryans did a great job last year. But, you know, you being on the map for a year now and people, you getting the recognition you're getting now in CJ Stroud and the hype that this Texans team is getting and what Stephon Diggs and this receiver room and everything, like there's a target on your back now.
Fascinating, JM.
Thanks, Mike.
Let's talk about a team very quickly that we kind of touched on before, but more specifically, we want to talk about CeeDee Lamb here. In the same state, though.
Yeah.
That is Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb locked up for 4 years, 136. And we kind of mentioned at the top, like, you know, there's a couple other receivers looking for contracts. Brandon Ayuk not going to get the same kind of money, but another guy that can get the same kind of money, Jamar Chase, as well. But this kind of, again, doesn't really reset the market. It's just, hey, this is what you have to pay Jamar Chase now.
Right. I actually got to say I was very satisfied with the way this contract negotiation went in the fact that CeeDee Lamb very well could have gotten more than Justin Jefferson. Like, if you go around the league and you ask people who's the best receiver in the NFL, some might say CeeDee Lamb and some might say Justin Jefferson. I think more would say Justin Jefferson, but it wouldn't be crazy to say it's CeeDee Lamb. So for him not to get paid more than that and keep resetting the market like we're seeing with these quarterbacks and, you know, all around the NFL at these positions, the guys just resetting the market. You know, it was nice to see a little compromise with all the guaranteed, the signing bonus money and all that stuff.
It's also, you're playing in Dallas, you're playing in Texas.
Yeah.
Taxes are a little less.
Yeah.
And like you play for the biggest brand in the sport, in sports, period.
Yes.
So, like, there is the benefit to also saying, okay, if I have to take a couple $1 million a year less to stay here, like, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to hold out.
No.
Hold out any longer than I was.
Right. The Chase situation
is fascinating.
It's different. Like, the guy is going into his 4th year in the NFL. This team has at least 2 more years of control for this guy. They're obviously, if they haven't, I'm pretty sure they had to do it already, pick up his 5th-year option.
Like, did that.
Jamar Chase is what's he gonna do? Hold out for 2 years? Like, what is he gonna do? So, I do think at some point cooler heads will prevail, and he's going to report for week 1. Maybe we'll see him miss 1 week. Like, I don't see this, unless his agent is giving him terrible advice, spilling into a holding out the year type of situation. That would be awful to do for Jamar Chase. He can get his extension at the end of this season.
He's 24 years old to be 25 at the end of it. Like, are we serious? Like, we're holding out this early?
Exactly. And this pisses me off because, like, I understand that if you're a really good player, you should be getting paid what really good players get paid. I get that. I'm totally for that because it's also, like, the team, like, it's fair because I think the team says, okay, we got to extend you because if we let you go into this season not extended, then there's a chance that other teams can sign you this offseason. Mm-hmm. So we really like you. You want your money. Let's come to an agreement and lock you up under, like, let's lock up an extension. But to do it before you're going to hit the open market 2 years before, if I'm the Bengals, I'm like, hell no. I spent a premium draft pick on you. Busts in the NFL happen all the time. I don't get to tell the player that sucks, hey, you're not playing to the standard that your rookie contract says. Give me back $14 million. I'm not allowed to do that. So for you to sit there and be negotiating and showing up 13 minutes late to practice in street clothes and say, give me an extension when you're 2 years before you're actually going to hit the open market, it's blasphemy.
It's crazy. It's disrespectful. It's all of those words. And it's also shocking. It actually is shocking. But yeah, I mean, I'm on the Bengals side here. I understand they're not a wealthy franchise. They're not, those owners aren't as rich as other owners are.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. They're very wealthy. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I understand money's tight over there and they don't always spend the max amount. But it's like, hey, you're a year away. And the benefits of drafting younger players and hitting on draft picks is the fact that you don't have to pay these guys for at the most now it's 4 years. Like that's the benefit.
Like CeeDee and Justin Jefferson, who were both picked in 2020, a year before Jamar Chase. They did the 4 years.
And they got their deal.
Yeah.
And there's nothing saying that, hey, you're not going to get that deal.
Right.
I know it's injury risk. I get that. But
Same thing with Ayuk.
If he, God forbid, tore his ACL, he's still getting paid.
Right.
They're still going to pay him.
Yeah.
He's still a premier player in this league, top 5 wide receiver in this league.
Yeah. Especially now, I mean, it obviously depends if it's a Nick Chubb situation, God forbid. We're talking hypothetical.
Completely hypothetical.
A lot of these guys are coming back, within a year from an ACL tear. The thing that really pisses me off is I really like, another spoiler alert for the prediction show next week, I really like the Bengals this year. And it finally seems
the same effing standard.
It finally seems like things are starting to align right for this team going into the season. Like the amount of times that we've been heading into the football season said, Joe Burrow's hurt. Something's going on in training camp. Like they haven't seemed to have things be aligning well for them.
Thing? Was it last year he had the knee thing, or was it
I thought
year
last
prior?
year was calf.
Right. Okay.
And maybe 2 years ago was the knee. But Burrow hasn't been healthy going into training camp 2 years prior. He's finally healthy. This team looks, a lot of reports are saying there's a different energy around the building. The team looks really good. The defense looks good. Like T. Higgins, that's been settled. It seems like T. Higgins is just fully in for this year and will probably be gone after the year. He's the one who actually needs a contract. And for Jamar Chase to be sitting here and causing a stink around this team, I mean, if I'm in the Bengals locker room, I'm like, you're an ass. Like, what are you doing right now?
This is the same guy, by the way, that calls out one of the greatest players we've ever seen, Patrick Mahomes, nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop calls him out and just adds extra motivation. I'm sure guys in that locker room don't like that as well. Anyway, let's move on here. This is a new segment. We're going to bring out a fantasy football segment. We're going to call it Love, Like, and Hate. So usually this is going to be, something, a player that we like for the week, love for the week, hate for the upcoming week. For the purposes of this episode, it's guys we love, like, and hate heading into fantasy football season. This is a segment where we want to get you guys involved. So we'll post on social media how to send us videos, send us comments, send us, an email, whatever it is. Send us players you love, like, and hate for the upcoming week in fantasy football. These, again, are projections for the upcoming fantasy football season. JM, we'll start with your love. Who are you in love with this upcoming fantasy season?
All right. My love is a guy I cheated a little bit because I think we came to a consensus that it was like a top 80 players were about eligible. This guy's ADP is 84, so he's just outside of it. But I would take him well above his ADP of 84. And that is, it's going to be a bit of a surprise. Deontay Johnson of the Carolina Panthers is my love. And I'll tell you why. The Carolina Panthers, it's no secret, had a brutal season last year. And, the coach is gone, and they bring in Dave Canales. Dave Canales was with Seattle the year Geno Smith had a career year, had a career resurgence, got that extension with the Seattle Seahawks. He then leaves, goes over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield has a career resurgence. He gets Baker Mayfield an extension. The Bucs get to the playoffs. They win a playoff game against the Eagles. And Dave Canales then goes over to the Carolina Panthers now to be their head coach. I like the Panthers this year. I like Bryce Young to have a good sophomore season. I don't like the Panthers to make the playoffs. Let me just say that. I like Bryce Young to have a good sophomore season. And Dave Canales wanted Deontay Johnson. This team went out and made a trade for Deontay Johnson. He apparently really, really wanted Johnson. Deontay Johnson, I think, was the best receiver in that receiver room anyways last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's had a good career. He's had relevant fantasy seasons in the past. And I think that this guy could be a pretty solid wide receiver, too, that you are getting in the range of a low-end flex to even a bench player where he's going at 80 as an ADP of 84 in PPR league. So I really like Deontay Johnson, the clear-cut number one for the Carolina Panthers.
Again, another situation where we like a team. I'm high. I'm higher than most. I mean, I don't think the Panthers aren't winning, a playoff game. They're not going to the playoffs, but like their win totals like 4.5, 5.5, bordering on that, and I think they can go over that this year with the right improvements.
You're gonna see signs from Bryce Young this year,
and that's all this season is for the Panthers, is seeing if you have anything in Bryce Young, and hopefully it ends up not being the worst trade of all time.
Yes.
All right, my love for the 2024 fantasy season, James Cook, the running back, obviously, for the Bills. Listen, we saw what happened last season when they made the switch to Joe Brady. They became, a more run-heavy offense with the running back, not just with Josh Allen. James Cook became much more relevant. I think he's ranked 29th right now on ESPN, so it's a higher guy, obviously, than JM's, but I think Cook has a chance to seriously break out. We know that they lost some receivers, and listen, maybe Josh Allen has to kind of reinvent, and we've seen it a little bit where he's had to reinvent himself and say, hey, I can't just throw the deep ball. Guys aren't always going to be open. I have to check down. I have to make the smart play, and James Cook can be effective in the pass game as well. I think Cook has a big year in this Bills offense. I don't think they take a step back. I think they have enough players there right now. I think James Cook's going to be a big reason why they don't step back, losing the big receivers, and they have a really good year.
Yeah, he could get a ton of touches this year. Definitely like the volume for James Cook. Okay, my like. So my like heading into the season, spoiler alert, I have all receivers on my list. I didn't do that by design. It's just the way it turned out to be. My like is Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. His ADP right now is 27th overall in PPR leagues, going around, the wide receiver 13 range. Nico Collins obviously is an exciting player. He had a really good year last year, finished around wide receiver 12, I believe, in ESPN. The reason, obviously there's some cons, there's some pros. Obviously the cons, number one, will start off the addition of Stephon Diggs this offseason. That is alarming. I do think that Collins' job as the number one receiver is safe. They gave him an extension this offseason. I think he's going to end up leading the team in targets. Now, he may still get some targets taken away from Diggs and from Schultz and from Tank Dell and other guys on the team. And, like we talked about before, I don't love the Texans as some other people do this year. And Nico also has, a little bit of an inconsistency issue last year where he had some weeks where he gave you 35, he gave you 27. He also had some weeks where he gave you 8 and he gave you 7, he gave you 11. So, you look to see Nico get a little more consistent there, but the like here comes from the number one receiver on a team where I think C.J. Stroud is still going to have a productive season where he gets the ball. I think this is going to be a pass-first team, and I think Stroud's going to throw the ball a ton, and I like Nico Collins as the number one receiver, and I see the upside. So that's why I'm a little wishy-washy on him, but, if I was sitting there at the top of the third round and still needing wide receiver, I would take Nico Collins.
Nico Collins, big-time pickup for me last year.
Yeah.
It was shocking, too, what he did. But, yeah, he was unbelievable last season. And I think Diggs can, have, the opposite effect of which people think. I think Diggs can be a negative there in Houston. But I don't think it'll affect Nico Collins. I think it might affect, C.J. Stroud. But Collins will still put up his numbers like that. My like is Terry McLaurin. He's just always underrated, basically, for his entire career. I love the addition of Cliff Kingsbury to run this offense. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury will probably be a head coach again in the NFL pretty soon, especially if he gets things clicking here with Jaden Daniels. But Jaden Daniels, big play quarterback. He's going to, be looking for him. He's the number one target in this offense. Obviously, we talked about their weapons before. We've seen Daniels obviously in college with a number one wide receiver and Neighbors. Neighbors had, 2 really big years, but one massive season last year. I think Daniels is just going to feed him this ball. He's going to have a lot of targets, and we know how talented he is. This isn't a new thing. It's just now he probably has some of the better quarterback play, at least later in the LF, some of the best quarterback play he's had in his entire career.
Right. Yeah, I like Terry McLaurin too. There's finally hope. Like you said, that, okay, maybe the quarterback play can be better and the offensive scheme and everything like that. Okay, my hate. Now, the love and the like I had a couple guys in mind. The hate, easiest decision of my life. I am a generational hater on this guy in fantasy this year.
I've heard this 3 times, by the way.
Again, staying in the receiver position. Michael Pittman Jr. is my hate, and it's a strong hate. So he is going as the number 35 overall player consensus in PPR. He's going 25th overall average in ESPN leagues. He's going 12th overall as the 12th highest receiver in ESPN leagues. I view this guy, I actually went try hard this year. I actually ended up making my own top 125 rankings. And wow. Michael Pittman, I believe I have 53rd. A couple of reasons. First of all, this guy was a volume merchant last year. Now, having volume merchants in fantasy is not a bad thing. They're actually some of the best players to have because you're going to get consistent. Michael Pittman was guaranteed for 7 for 70 every game last year, right? He only scored 4 touchdowns. And the concern here with me is most of those games were with Gardner Minshew. And the games with Anthony Richardson, he had a couple good games, a couple of bad games, but I don't see Pittman's volume giving him this wide receiver 12 ranking that we're seeing right now. They're going to run the ball a lot, this Indianapolis Colts team. Anthony Richardson is a dual threat quarterback, but he is going to run a lot this year. I think Michael Pittman is going to be very hard to see in the end zone within the 20-yard line. This team is not going to target him a lot in the red zone. You're going to see a lot of rushing touchdowns from Anthony Richardson, a lot of rushing touchdowns from Jonathan Taylor. There are other mouths to feed on this offense. It sucks. They just lost Jelani Woods for the entire season, their projected starting tight end. They still have Josh Downs. They have the rookie Adonai Mitchell. They have Alec Pierce. Like, there are obviously other receivers who can play for this team. Pittman is the clear-cut number one. I don't want people to get this twisted. I don't think Michael Pittman is going to lose the number one job. I don't think he's going to have only 800 yards this year. I just see a year where Michael Pittman is in the low 1,000-yard range. And only I honestly see Michael Pittman being like a Garrett Wilson with Zach Wilson kind of a thing. And that is not a top 12 receiver, and that is certainly not a top 25 player in fantasy. That's why I give him the ranking of around 50, because that's what I think he's going to end up being. One stat that I forgot to put in there, he was 58th in fantasy points per target last year.
Are those your rankings right there?
No, this is another thing I have.
I
have a spreadsheet.
It's like a huge, it's a sick document.
Yeah,
I thought, wow.
I have a spreadsheet, but he was 58th in fantasy points per target last year, meaning the value of his targets are not very valuable. So he's going to need all those targets again to keep up with that pace. And like I said, I don't see him getting in the end zone, and I could see his targets dipping a bit with Richardson.
Very interesting. the hate for Michael Pittman.
I don't like Michael Pittman.
It is absolutely
to me, it's
crazy.
It's crazy to sit there, especially in ESPN. Like, they have Pittman 20th. That's ahead of Nico Collins. It's ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. It's ahead of Mike Evans. It's ahead of some of these real big name guys. These guys that are supposed to have really good years and have great upside. I don't see it with Pittman.
That's absolutely crazy. All right, very interesting. Yeah. My hate is gonna be. A lot of people will hate this. I don't really care. It's Derrick Henry. I understand that he's going to, a situation where you have obviously the best running quarterback in the league. Most of the time you have a good offensive line. They lost some guys this offseason to the New York Jets. I still think, as my phone buzzes and shakes the entire table, I still think they'll be productive. He'll have a good season, but he's being drafted in the second round, correct?
Yep.
I don't understand that. He's up there in age. I think I predicted him to have a big fall off last year. It was I just don't trust that he's going to stay healthy, and I can't stand predicting injury. But eventually, a player of his size at his position has to start declining.
Right.
And I think it starts here.
Yep. So there's a couple things in fantasy that are red flags. It is running backs 28 or older, and it is running backs switching teams who had top 24 fantasy performances the year before. So, obviously last year, an example is a Miles Sanders, a guy who had a good season the year before, switched teams, and he sucked. Derrick Henry fits both of those criteria. He's over 28 years old, and he's switching his team, and he finished top 24 last year. Now, I don't want to put Derrick Henry in the same conversation as Miles Sanders. And I actually, I wouldn't take Henry exactly at his ADP. I would take him maybe towards the bottom of the 20s, high 30s range. Because I do think Henry has shown his whole career he is an outlier. But, Lamar Jackson's a running quarterback. That offensive line might have some problems this year. They lost two of their starting offensive linemen to the Jets, and they haven't really replaced them.
No, we talked about it. We actually talked about it on the phone over the weekend, and they're a team where, if they did lose it, I trust them drafting offensive linemen and replacing offensive linemen and developing offensive linemen. But they didn't replace a lot of these guys. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I know they have two really good pieces already on that offensive line. But, I get it. There's concern. And I have concern about them as a team overall, and I certainly have concern about Derrick Henry. Yeah. There we go. So, very excited about that segment, actually. It's gonna. I think it can get heated. I think it can get, especially when we have guys. We don't have teams yet. I don't have a team. You don't? Do you have a team?
I don't have a team.
So
I have two drafts on Monday night, and then a draft on Wednesday.
When's our draft?
Monday night, 7 p.m. Then I have one 9 p.m. on Monday.
Oh, good. Please. So it'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it. The first episode of The Hardline is completed, a football podcast. Very, very excited about this. Obviously, we mentioned that before. New logos, everything will be out tomorrow.
Yep. So Wednesday morning, next Wednesday morning, will be the release of
The preview show.
The preview show.
Yes.
And then Friday morning will be the release of Week 1 NFL gambling show.
We're still setting a date for the Liberty game, by the way. Might end
this
up being a
guy's
playoff
just-
game. Might end up being a playoff game, honestly. Liberty game 1 playoffs. Who the hell knows? Great team we have in New York here.
Yep.
By the way, we got called out a couple weeks ago. We got called
Wow.
out. I forget who, but somebody said you didn't know the WNBA. Remember we were like, oh, the WNBA.
Oh,
takes
that
a
actually,
break.
yes. Somebody, yeah, I think it was
was-
on our YouTube comments or something like that.
Oh no, somebody
was,
said it to me. I'm blanking on who it was, but they take a break for the Olympics.
Yes.
So-
I'm very sorry that we're not as well versed in the WNBA.
They had their break, they
Yeah.
had their All-Star game, and then they
Yeah.
went to the Olympics. So our
Yeah.
apologies.
Oh, it made huge noise in the Olympics. Yeah, I saw coverage all over the place.
Did we?
I did not. I'm being very sarcastic.
Okay. But yeah, so I'll get to the Liberty game, and
Did we win? Did we win?
I don't know.
I think we
I
won.
hope so.
I hope so.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll get to the Liberty game, and we'll come up with a new bet on the first episode of the Gambling Show, which, again, very excited about that. So, yeah, we'll talk to you guys next week with our NFL preview prediction
Yes,
show.
sir.